UFC Fight Night, Dawson versus Green. The UFC is back after a couple of weeks, and man, I am so thankful. My Saturdays have felt very empty without it. We have a solid card here that's going to be taking place at the Apex. I'm going to go through some of these fights here and break down my predictions. I'm going to start with the last fight on the prelims, Yanku Telaba taking on Felipe Lins. Kutilaba is the slight favorite in this one. He's 2-3 in his last five, while Lins is 3-2 in his last five. Lins is coming into this one with a lot more momentum. He's on a 3-fight win streak with wins against Marcin Prachnio, OSP, and Max Grishin. Kutilaba was on a 3-fight skid before KOing Tanner Boser in his most recent fight. Kutilaba, I will acknowledge, has definitely been fighting the better opponents of these two. He's fought guys like Johnny Walker, Kenny Nzechukwu, guys who are big, athletic, and dangerous finishers, and that kind of explains a bit why he was finding himself getting finished. But I have felt for a while now that Kutilaba is just a tier below some of those higher ranked, more explosive light heavyweights. This should be a really good matchup for him. Felipe Lins is a guy who's found a lot of success as of late. The dude's just been looking jacked recently. I don't know. I think he maybe stopped doing cardio or something and has just been living in the weight room. The guy's been looking big, and despite being 38 years old, seems to be the best he's been in his career. I think he finds a KO in this one versus Kutilaba. Someone's definitely going down. I think Lins just might have a better chance of finding the chin and wobbling Kutilaba. Next up, we have Alexander Hernandez, and he is taking on Bill Algeo. Hernandez is 2-3 in his last 5 fights, while Bill Algeo is 3-2. Hernandez is the slight favorite, coming in at about -120. And Hernandez, man, he's kind of just the prototypical short, jacked guy. He's pretty stocky, he throws bombs, kind of like that, what's my man's name in the featherweight division? You're like kind of that Josh Emmett style. I mean, he's in there, he's trying to brawl. Bill Algeo is kind of on the other side of the spectrum where he's a lot longer, but he likes to brawl too, so I do see this being a firefight between these two guys. I think it's going to be pretty even on the feet. Hernandez has got good power, but Algeo can catch people too. And I think Algeo kind of just has that submission upside as well. So I'm going to give him the edge for that reason. I think he can rock Hernandez and find a sub in this one. Next up is a lightweight fight between Drew Dober and Ricky Glenn. Dober is a massive -470 favorite. He's 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Ricky Glenn is 2-1 in his last 5 fights, and he's coming in at a +360 underdog. Both these guys are coming off of KO losses to Matt Pravola and Christos Giagos, respectively. Dober's fight style, I commented on this before the Pravola fight, that his style just leaves him open to getting caught and KO'd. He's a brawler, and it's, I think, what has led to a lot of his success as well as a lot of his failure in his career and those losses. It's just, I think that's a tough fighting style to have sustained success doing. Ricky Glenn, both these guys are 34 years old. You wouldn't really know it. Glenn, I think, is slowed down a bit more than we've seen from Drew Dober in his years as a fighter. I just don't really see Glenn having a ton of KO power to really stun the Crimson Chin in this one. Dober, he really can take a punch, and Frivola was able to crack him, but I don't think Glenn has that kind of power. I think this fight just lends itself to Dober getting KO over Ricky Glenn, just in some exchange. I think both guys might land, but Drew Dober's gonna land harder and get the finish. Next up is a welterweight fight between Joaquin Buckley and Alex Morono. Buckley is the -170 favorite. He's 3-2 in his last 5. Morono is at +145, and he's 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Buckley, I should mention, is undefeated at 170. It seems that he's found his new home here, and let's be honest, he should have made this switch a while ago. He was always undersized at 185, and he clearly is capable of making the weight and made weight for this fight. And I think this is going to be a really good home for him. He's not going to be fighting guys who have multiple inches over him and are just going to be carrying a lot more weight into the cage. And I think his power is going to carry super well into the 170 division. He's coming off a KO over Andre Fialho, which feels like everyone's KOing Fialho these days, but regardless, that should give him a lot of confidence going into this one. Alex Morono, I think is super underrated. He's 4-1 in his last 5 fights, and you don't win 80% of your fights unless you know what you're doing. I think he's super savvy. He knows what it takes to win on the cards more often than not. Did get KO'd by that Argentinian guy. Remind me his name. Man, I'm tweaking right now. Santiago Ponzinibbio. But he was dominating that whole fight before we got KO'd. So anything can really happen. I think Morono struggled against the guys, though, who do have more of that finishing ability. He got KO'd by Chaos Williams in the past, and I think Buckley really fits that description. Just going to be able to use his superior athleticism and explosiveness to find a KO over Alex Morono in this one. Our co-main event is a middleweight fight between Joe Pyfer and Abdul Razak Alhassan. Pyfer is the -400 favorite. He's 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Alhassan is 2-3 in his last 5 fights, and he's going to be the 3-1 underdog. I'm expecting Joe Pyfer to be Joe Pyfer in this one. I think this is a very positive matchup for him, taking on a guy so much smaller in stature. Obviously, Alhassan, this is not going to be his first time taking on a guy who's several inches taller. He is undersized at 185, coming in around 5'10", but I don't think he's really fought anyone as big as Joe Pyfer. I mean, when Joe Pyfer steps into the cage, he's usually noticeably bigger. He looks like a light heavyweight in there a lot of the time against some of these 185ers. I mean, the only concern is Joe Pyfer has been vocal about the injuries that he's been dealing with, and it seems like he's an often injured guy, which is definitely concerning, but I think he's smart enough to not take a fight that he's not going to be 100% or at least close to it. And I think even Joe Pyfer at 90-95% can be enough to finish Abdul Razak Alhassan in this one. So I'm taking Pyfer by KO. I'm not going to count out Alhassan at all because, I mean, he's shown the ability to put guys out with one punch. So, and Pyfer himself acknowledged that this is a dangerous opponent for really anyone to fight, but I do think the cards are going to be stacked against Alhassan in this one. And then we have our main event. It is Grant Dawson versus Bobby Green in the lightweight division. Grant Dawson's a very heavy favorite, -440. He's 4-0-1 in his last 5. Bobby Green, on the other hand, is 2-2-1. And can I just start by saying this should have been Patty versus Bobby Green on a pay-per-view somewhere. I mean, I don't hate the Tony Ferguson and Patty Pimblett matchup. I mean, I think it's kind of stupid, and I think, I hate it. What am I even saying? I think it's so dumb that you want to prop up a guy like Patty Pimblett, but you don't want to face him. You don't want to put him against a guy who's coming off of a win. I just don't really understand that. I think the stars aligned for a fight between Patty Pimblett versus Bobby Green, and that's a fight where if Patty wins it, that his trajectory is so much higher than if he goes and beats Tony Ferguson. And it's like, okay, so what? Everyone, the last like 6 or 7 guys who faced Tony have beat him. So that's my little rant before even breaking down this fight, just because I think it's the UFC really is kind of wasting Bobby Green's name power and sort of the attention that he's able to gather himself, and they're kind of just wasting it on this fight night fight against Grant Dawson, who's no one's really ever heard of. But nevertheless, Bobby agreed to it, and I'm sure, and he's, I'm sure he's getting paid for this one, so all power to him. But I think a lot of people are expecting this fight to go one way, which is Grant Dawson to just smother Bobby Green and tap him out. And that's how I think it's going to go as well. I think Bobby Green, he had that submission win versus Tony Ferguson. I think Grant Dawson's another beast. He's on another level. He's out-grappled Mark Madsen, who's like an Olympic wrestler, which, I think it was in Greco, but the dude can definitely grapple, and he tapped him out. I don't think Bobby Green's, high school, college wrestling acumen can really stack up to that of Mark Madsen. So I just don't know if Bobby Green's going to have the tools to keep Dawson off of him. His submission defense is definitely going to be tested. I will say, if this gets into the later rounds, 4-5, it's going to be really hard for Dawson to keep up that grappling pace, and Bobby Green's going to be super comfortable just fighting his game at that point. So I guess that's definitely going to be Bobby Green's goal in this one, but I just don't see him really getting to that point. So Grant Dawson by submission is going to be the pick there. And with that, that is my breakdown of this card, at least the fights that I found interesting enough to really break down. I'm liking the board, fellas. I really am. I think I'm seeing it pretty clearly right now. I'd be shocked if I don't go 5-1, 6-0 here. So let me know in the comments if you guys have a favorite pick or anything like that. And with that, enjoy the card and have a good weekend. Peace.